Now Steve, one of our elders here at the church, a volunteer, is going to come and lead us on Pentecost Sunday. Steve, over to you.
Have a great week, everybody. Happy Pentecost. Happy Pentecost. A day where we remember one of the most dramatic and extraordinary crescendo moments in the whole of Earth time. A positive explosion of energy that is still reverberating thousands of years later. This was the starting point of the church, when the promised Holy Spirit was released as a gift to all 120 people in the upper room, which then flowed into thousands of other people who then took this gift, this power, this encounter, and the message of the gospel to the ends of the earth. Happy Pentecost. This is an extraordinary moment that we are reflecting on, and some of you will be hearing a Pentecost message for the 70th time. And some of you will be hearing a Pentecost message for the first time. And I'm praying that something of the extraordinary and the supernatural moment would really inspire every single one of us afresh this morning. Yeah? I want to thank my son Sam for pulling together that Jacob Collier video. Myself, Jamie Miller, and Noah Derling. We were at that gig. And if you listen on earphones, you can hear me, the three of us, obviously belting it out. It was quite an extraordinary moment because Jacob Collier is known as one of the finest musicians ever in the world. He's a 26-year-old multi-instrumentalist who's already got about 9 Grammys. And his musicianship is off the charts. But he finished with this moment of this collective experience. This was the final thing. The musicians were off stage, and he led us in this crescendo moment. And it was a spiritual moment. We all walked out impacted, talking not about his musicianship, but by this experience that we had shared together, that we had been led in. It was like nothing we'd ever been in before. And you know what? Hundreds of people, like in every gig, are filming it on their phones. And so within a week, you've got YouTube and you've got all these social medias of this experience, of sharing this experience. And I went to Birmingham at the Promised Land for my family Christmas. And I said, guys, have you heard Jacob Collier, the way he finished his gig? He was like, no. So we got it out. And I tell you, it was like, again, recapturing something of that moment together as a family. And my sister got so excited. She's such a great vocalist. So she started sharing out. This video, through that movement of people sharing about this experience, has been witnessed by tens of millions of people around the world. It goes from one experience into the experience of about 10 million people around the world. Acts 2. When the day of Pentecost came, they were all together in one place. Suddenly, a sound like the blowing of a violent wind came from heaven and filled the whole house where they were sitting. They saw what seemed to be tongues of fire that separated and came to rest on each of them. All of them were filled with the Holy Spirit and began to speak in other tongues as the Spirit enabled. 120 people were in town, in the room, and thousands of people were also in town to celebrate a festival called Shavuot, a festival to commemorate Moses receiving the law on Mount Sinai. This was a big event that was drawing in the thousands to this festival. I'd like you for a minute just to put yourselves in the shoes of 120 people who were all gathered in that one place. These are the people who had been with Jesus over months and years. And can you imagine them being 120 in this upper room, beginning to reminisce, reflect, remember? These were only weeks before that they were with Jesus. The question, if you had been with Jesus for that time and you are now in this upper room, what would be the first memory? What would be the first go-to when you're reflecting on the life of Christ? Was it the wedding in Cana? Was it calming the storm at the sea? Was it the woman at the well, the blind seeing again, the feeding of the thousands with a few fish and loaves of bread? Was it Peter walking on water, the turning of the tables in the temple? What was the story that you would go to as you're remembering being with Jesus only weeks before being in this upper room? Were you thinking maybe about the radical teaching about this kingdom that disrupted everything of what we thought about when it came to power? A kingdom that was best reflected through children, in the words of Christ. Teaching also that would ultimately lead Jesus to the cross. 50 days after the death and resurrection of Christ, it'd be amazing to see how they were then comprehending this experience. 50 days since grieving the death of Jesus, thinking that this was the very end of everything of what they thought they knew. 48 days then since remembering that moment where rumors started to come through of resurrection. 46 days, I'm making these numbers up, these are not historically, I don't know, let's say 46 days. 46 days since Jesus appeared to them and Thomas put his hands in the side of Christ. I wonder what these moments were like before anything kicked off in the upper room. I wonder the reminiscence, the remembering of what Jesus said and did. I wonder if somebody actually was reflecting on a specific word that Jesus brought, reflected in John 16, where it says, Jesus says, "It is to your advantage that I go away. For if I do not go away, the Helper will not come to you. But if I go, I will send him to you." Then suddenly is a word I really like. Suddenly, a suddenly moment. It's a big word. It's out of nowhere. Something so beyond our rational minds, our intellect, our comfort zones. Something so wild and out of human control happens in one of the most important cities in history. Suddenly, it's time. 700 years, some people anticipate, after Joel's prophetic word that we read on the screen. 700 years. It's now time. Suddenly, here we go, out of nowhere. Acts 2, now they were staying in Jerusalem, God-fearing Jews from every nation under heaven. When they heard this sound, this suddenly moment, a crowd came together in bewilderment because each one heard their own language being spoken. Utterly amazed, they asked, "Aren't all these who are speaking Galileans? Then how is it that each one of us hears them in our native language?" This moment in history is supernatural, is extraordinary. It is beyond our comprehension. This is the moment when the teaching, the kingdom, the promises, the miracles, the story goes from Jesus and the few and explodes into the whole of the world. In the terms of marketing and viral campaigns, this is divinely genius. It is, isn't it? You would pay a lot of money for that right there. Let's create an unforgettable experience with wind and fire. Let's get 120 people all speaking different languages with different accents, including Geordie and Brummie, so that everyone can understand. This is genius. Next slide. Just read that for yourselves. These are the kind of people that were coming together. These are the kind of nations. Why are you laughing? I can read them, but I'm just not going to go there. These are some of the regions that are spoken about. And I love the last bit. It says, "We hear them declaring the wonders of God in our own tongues." Amazed and perplexed, they asked each other, "What does this mean?" So in modern day geography, we are talking about people in Jerusalem from Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Western Syria, Turkey, Egypt, Libya, Crete, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Oman, UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, and of course people from the local region of Judea and Jerusalem. That's what that slide is. In modern day, these are the countries that we're talking about. An incredible array of culture and society and people coming together. So think about this. Just think about this. Again, just allow the freshness of this moment come into the mix. Just months after the death and the resurrection of Jesus, there are now multiple people in multiple cities and empires who have not only the knowledge of Jesus, but thousands who have experienced supernatural encounter with the divine. All across the world, just months after the death and the resurrection of Christ. How do you put words to something that is so other, so wild and powerful, so beyond our intellect? Pentecost is where we enter the sphere of the supernatural, when the presence of God comes in wind and fire. A euphoric, joyous experience to the point of people looking out of control and drunk at 9 o'clock in the morning. Millennia later, we read of experiences like that, don't we? And we think, oh, that's for a certain time, or maybe even for a certain denominational stream of church. Today, there is an economy called the ecstatic experience economy. Has anybody ever heard of that before? You know that there's an ecstatic experience economy, and it's worth trillions and trillions of pounds. A number of years back, I read a book called Stealing Fire that focuses on Navy SEALs, maverick scientists and Silicon Valley leaders who are continually pursuing the ecstatic or peak states, is what they call it, that could unlock life potential and a leading edge. In a review of Stealing Fire, a journalist wrote, sorry, I couldn't get this on the screen, an important cultural driver for why we are talking about ecstatic spiritual experiences today is the decline of organized religion in the West. This has created a large group of spiritual, but not religious, who are just as hungry for spiritual experiences, perhaps even more hungry than ever before. Hence the fact that while attendance at church is going down, the number of people who say they have had spiritual or mystical experience in the US and the UK is going up. Pentecost reminds us again that the Lord is never confined, never restricted, never narrowed down, especially by any theological or denominational frameworks or infrastructures. People are hungry for the truth that comes through words, but Pentecost reminds us that the birth of the church started with wind and fire, a euphoric experience which led to words in all kinds of languages. And then Peter stands up, filled with the Holy Spirit, and declares the prophecy of Joel. The world is longing for euphoric experiences that are beyond ourselves. It is a human longing that is in us. But again, we struggle sometimes to associate that, for all kinds of reasons, with the divine. Again, moments of euphoria is something we think about in the terms of another stream of church. The fact is, we are all wired in multiple ways. But I think there is a challenge all the time for us to be always on the front foot, seeking to keep things moving forward, to relinquish control, to have our eyes open to what the Spirit is doing, to be spiritually awake and open. And I think Jesus experienced moments of euphoria and experience, which is why he spent so much time at mountains watching sunrises. I find it interesting that we have this wild and positively disruptive supernatural moment in history when the Holy Spirit comes on all people. Yet I think if I was to ask most people, how would you draw or depict the Holy Spirit? Most people would draw a dove. The dove is a powerful symbol depicting peace. And Jesus absolutely reflects and symbolizes that. But I wonder if people who lead the empire were really happy for that term, the dove, just to remain as the central symbol. Who's afraid of people who are just doves? Pentecost unveils an unpredictable wildness of the Holy Spirit that inspired the Celtic people to see the Holy Spirit not as a dove, but as a wild goose. Untamed and uncontrolled, a disruptive and surprising force, Pope Francis in the 2013 message said the Holy Spirit upsets us because the Spirit moves us, makes us walk, pushes us forward, but we want to tame the Holy Spirit. John Donahue said on a video, I think there is a wonderful danger in God that we have totally forgotten, because one of the things humans like to do is they like to bring in the tamers to tame their deities. There is a wildness in God, and we are called to make God dangerous again. The image of the Holy Spirit as a dove isn't the whole story. No? Should we keep it as a dove? Jesus said this wonderful, wonderful word. I will not leave you as orphans. I will come to you. John 14. The Holy Spirit is a gift of love to humanity. A gift of love. We talk about the gifts of the Holy Spirit, the outworkings. But let's just consider the Holy Spirit purely as a gift from a God of unconditional love and grace. Do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have received from God? Christ in us, 1 Corinthians. This is again a beautiful, mysterious language of Christ being in us. So today we mark the birth of the church. We've started with fire and wind and chaos and life and worship and tongues that transformed thousands alive from multiple people groups that all went back and shared their experience, and the global expansion of the church begins. For us, Pentecost, I think, is an opportunity to shake off any sense of spiritual apathy or complacency. Someone once encouraged me to keep things molten, which I just thought was such a nice little line. To keep things molten, hot molten that flows from volcanoes. Keep things flowing, relinquish control. Understand again the gift of the Holy Spirit and what it is to be a temple, a container, a carrier of the divine. You know, sometimes you will physically experience a sense of excitement and euphoria, or an unexplainable sense of peace. But most times, this walk of faith is like Ron Seal. It does what it says on the tin. It's a walk of faith. I thought I'd get a bit of a laugh at that, actually, because Ron Seal, for anybody who's visiting, we've actually got somebody in our church called Ron Seal, which I just think is the best thing ever. But there is a walk of faith into the unknown, the adventurous, the mystery. And what Jesus is asking us to do is remain in me, learn dependency, daily accept the invitation to be part of the divine dance. Father, Jesus, and Holy Spirit. Jesus said, I will not leave you as orphans. I will send an advocate, a counselor. So let's live in the Spirit. Let's be open to the Holy Spirit. Spirit, break out. Break our walls down. Spirit, break out. Break our walls down. Let's watch the second half of this video together. Chris Blundell had a picture, a word which we considered as the eldership today was just the right moment to share that. It's, sorry that's small writing, but I'll read it out. It's a picture of a huge metal pressure valve, horizontal wheel shut tight. Hand slowly, then picture goes to hand slowly, carefully turning it to the left to open it, releasing the power that had been deliberately shut down. Releasing the power of the Holy Spirit that had been restricted because of past experiences. Wonderful, effervescent fizz and life and light, and the power of the Holy Spirit is then released. And she quotes Isaiah 43, "See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the desert and streams in the wasteland to give drink to my people, my chosen." And she just sensed this is for those who have shut down in their relationship with God because of hurt or circumstance. For those who have shut down towards the Holy Spirit. And for TBC as a whole, the releasing and welcoming of joy in and through the Holy Spirit. Spirit, break out. Break our walls down. We're going to sing that song together, just as a heart cry. And like for me, when I read those, when I sing those words, it's personal, yeah, but I'm crying out for our nation. I'm crying out for our politics. I'm crying out for our economics, for our business, for our land and farming. I'm crying out to God for our food systems, for our education, health and science and innovation. I'm crying, Spirit, break out, break the walls down. How we need the Holy Spirit, both personally and as a church, but how the world needs the Holy Spirit to come in power, to break our walls down. And so I'm going to stand down here and I'm going to sing this song. If you want to come and join me as a kind of a sense of like something in mind that you want to just make that your heart cry. Spirit, break out, break the walls down. If this is a personal thing for you, Lord, where I've run dry, Spirit, break out, break the walls down. For my family, for my kids, Spirit, break out, break the walls down. For my business, for my calling, for my role in the community, for my neighbours, for the street, Spirit, break out, break the walls down. They were together in the upper room. I'm sensing that we're together to respond collectively together as a power of us declaring together. So if you want to come and join me, if nobody joins me, that's totally cool. I'm totally chilled. But I'm going to stand down here. If somebody'd like to come into the aisles and just down the front, just as a heart cry, just as a prayer, then I'd encourage you to do that, and then we'll go from there. Let's sing together. Let's stand.